And so we begin the greatest coming-of-age story in football history. And we're about to dive deep into 6 years that transformed a skinny teenager from Madeira into the best player on planet Earth. And this isn't just any football story. This is the tale of how Cristiano Ronaldo conquered England, conquered Europe, and ultimately conquered the entire football world while wearing the famous red shirt of Manchester United. And every single moment of this journey will leave you absolutely breathless. And when Cristiano Ronaldo stepped off that plane at Manchester Airport on a grey August day in 2003, he was just an 18-year-old kid with tricks, pace, and dreams bigger than the sky itself. But by the time he departed in the summer of 2009, he was leaving as the reigning Ballon d'Or winner, a Champions League victor, a Premier League champion 3 times over, and the most complete footballer the world had ever seen. And the journey between those 2 points was filled with magic, heartbreak, controversy, triumph, and absolute glory. And this is the story of how a boy became a man, and how a talent became a superstar, and how a dreamer became a legend. And buckle up, because this ride is going to be absolutely incredible. The background, from Madeira to Manchester. And before we get to his Manchester United career, we need to understand exactly where Cristiano Ronaldo came from. And our story begins on the beautiful Portuguese island of Madeira, specifically in the humble neighborhood of Santo Antonio in Funchal. And born on February 5, 1985, Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro entered this world in the most modest of circumstances imaginable. And his father, José Dinis Aveiro, worked as a kit man and gardener, earning barely enough to support the family. And his mother, Maria Dolores, worked as a cook, taking any job she could find to make ends meet. And they lived in a small tin-roof house that barely had enough room for Cristiano, his brother Hugo, and his 2 sisters Elma and Katia. But what young Cristiano lacked in material wealth, he made up for with an absolutely insatiable hunger for football. And from the moment he could walk, that ball was glued to his feet like it was attached with supernatural powers. And his neighbors remember seeing this skinny kid with tears streaming down his face because he couldn't bear to stop playing even when his mother called him for dinner. And he would dribble past imaginary defenders in the streets until darkness made it impossible to see the ball. And even then, he'd practice his skills against the wall by the light of street lamps. And this wasn't just passion, this was obsession. And this was destiny calling out to him with a voice that couldn't be ignored. The sacrifice. And young Ronaldo started his organized football at amateur club Andorinha, where his father worked as the kit man. And even at that incredibly young age, everyone who watched him play could see he was different, special, touched by something extraordinary. And by age 8, people were already talking about this kid who could do things with a ball that seemed impossible. And he moved to Nacional, another Madeiran club, at age 10. And there his talent continued to blossom and grow. But the island of Madeira, as beautiful and special as it was, simply couldn't contain his immense talent. And at just 12 years old, Cristiano faced the most difficult and life-changing decision of his young life. And Sporting Lisbon, one of Portugal's biggest and most prestigious clubs, wanted him to join their legendary academy. But it meant leaving absolutely everything he knew behind. And it meant leaving his mother's home-cooked meals and warm embraces. And it meant leaving his father's encouragement and support. And it meant leaving his siblings' company and the friends he'd grown up with. And it meant moving to the capital city, Lisbon, a place that felt like a different world, completely alone at just age 12. And can you even begin to imagine the courage that decision took? And 12 years old, saying goodbye to your entire family, packing your few belongings, and moving to a big city where you knew absolutely nobody. And all to chase a dream that seemed completely impossible, a dream that most people told you would never come true. But Cristiano didn't hesitate for even a single second, and he knew exactly what he wanted from life. And nothing, absolutely nothing in this world, would stand in his way. The sporting years and growing pains. And life at Sporting's famous academy wasn't easy at all for the young Madeiran boy. And the Lisbon kids mocked his thick island accent mercilessly every single day. And they called him names and made fun of the way he pronounced his words. And they laughed at his humble background and his second-hand clothes. But Ronaldo never let their words break his spirit. And instead, he let his feet do all the talking he needed. And every insult became motivation. And every jeer became determination. And every doubt that others expressed became fuel for the raging fire burning inside his heart. And he would practice longer than anyone else. And he would train harder than anyone else. And he would push himself further than anyone else. And slowly but surely, those same kids who had mocked him started to realize they were in the presence of someone truly extraordinary. And by age 16, Ronaldo achieved something absolutely remarkable and unprecedented. And he became the first player in sporting's entire glorious history to play for the under-16s, under-17s, under-18s, B team, and the first team all in a single season. And think about that for just a moment. And that's not just raw talent on display. And that's not just physical ability. And that's an unstoppable force of nature tearing through every single level of competition like a hot knife through butter. And his official first-team debut came on October 7th, 2002, against Moreirense in the Primeira Liga. And he was just 17 years old, still a kid really, playing against grown men who were bigger, stronger, and more experienced. And manager Laszlo Balloni saw something truly special in this teenager, something that transcended normal talent. And the way he moved with the ball was absolutely mesmerizing to watch. And the audacity of his tricks left even experienced defenders completely bewildered. And the fearlessness with which he took on opponents twice his size was genuinely breathtaking. And he wasn't just playing football, he was creating pure art with his feet. And throughout the 2002 to 2003 season, Ronaldo continued to establish himself in Sporting's first team. And he scored his first senior goal against Moreirense in October 2002. And suddenly this kid wasn't just a prospect anymore, and he was becoming a player that opposing managers had to specifically plan for. And his stopovers were becoming legendary, and his pace was burning past defenders. And his ability to beat opponents with such ease was becoming impossible to ignore. The game that changed everything. And now we come to the most important 90 minutes in Cristiano Ronaldo's entire life. On August 6, 2003, at the magnificent Estadio José Alvalade in Lisbon, Portugal. And Sporting had just built this absolutely stunning new stadium and wanted to inaugurate it in style, with a celebration worthy of such a magnificent venue. And who better to invite than Manchester United, the giants of English football, managed by the legendary Sir Alex Ferguson and packed with superstars. And this was supposed to be a routine, friendly summer match, a celebration. Nothing more than a chance for United to stretch their legs and get some fitness on their pre-season tour. And Manchester United arrived with a squad absolutely full of world-class talent that would make any club jealous. And Roy Keane was there, the warrior captain who feared absolutely nobody on the football pitch. And Rio Ferdinand was there, having just broken the British transfer record to join from Leeds. And Ruud van Nistelrooy was there, one of the deadliest and most clinical strikers in world football. And Ryan Giggs was there, the Welsh wizard who'd been tormenting defenses for over a decade. And Paul Scholes, the ginger genius with that incredible passing range. And John O'Shea, a solid defender who'd seen it all. And these were household names, absolute champions who had conquered England multiple times and won the Champions League. And the United players probably thought this would be a nice, gentle warm-up game, and maybe break a light sweat, and get some match fitness before the serious business of the Premier League season began, and perhaps sign a few autographs for the Portuguese fans, and then fly back to Manchester and forget all about it. And oh, how spectacularly wrong they were. And oh, how their world was about to be turned completely upside down. And oh, how this routine friendly would change the course of football history forever. The performance of a lifetime. And from the very first whistle that night in Lisbon, something absolutely magical and unprecedented happened. And number 28 for Sporting Lisbon, a skinny 18-year-old kid who looked like a strong wind might blow him over, started doing things that made grown men in the Manchester United defense look like traffic cones scattered randomly on a training ground. And Cristiano Ronaldo was absolutely sensational that night. And he was completely and utterly unplayable. And every single time he got the ball anywhere near his feet, He ran directly at the United defense like a man possessed by some higher power. And step over after step over, feint after feint, twist after turn after incredible turn. And John O'Shea, who would later become his teammate and friend, must have gotten dizzy just trying to follow his impossibly quick movements. And picture this incredible scene that unfolded that warm August evening. And Ronaldo receives the ball on the right wing, about 30 yards from goal. And he looks up and surveys the scene in front of him. And here comes O'Shea, a solid, experienced, no-nonsense defender who'd faced some of the best players in the world. And Ronaldo drops his shoulder to the left. And O'Shea moves that way. But then Ronaldo does a lightning quick step over with his right foot. And then another one even faster with his left. And then he explodes past. O'Shea on the outside like the defender is standing completely still. And the crowd absolutely erupts. And the United bench sits up straighter in their seats, paying much closer attention now. And he didn't just do it once to show he could. And he didn't do it twice to prove it wasn't a fluke. And he did it again and again and again throughout the entire match. And he was toying with them like a cat plays with a mouse. And this kid, this teenager who should have been nervous and intimidated, was making one of the best teams in the entire world look absolutely ordinary. And he was making Premier League defenders look like they'd never seen a football before. And the match itself ended 3-1 to Sporting, with goals from Lorenzo Faria, Goncalves, and Rui Bento. But honestly, nobody who was there that night remembers those goals with any clarity. And everyone, absolutely everyone, remembers him. And everyone remembers the number 28 who lit up that stadium like the brightest supernova in the sky. And everyone remembers the kid who announced to the football world that something special had arrived. The reaction that sealed his fate. And on the Manchester United bench that night, something unprecedented and extraordinary was happening. And these were players who'd seen everything, won everything, played against everyone. And yet they were turning to each other with eyes wide with genuine amazement. And Roy Keane, the hard man who rarely praised anyone and certainly never gushed, leaned over to Quinton Fortune and said in no uncertain terms that United needed to sign this kid immediately. And Rio Ferdinand was absolutely mesmerized by what he was watching. And even the legendary Ryan Giggs, who had been tormenting defenders himself for over a decade, was genuinely impressed by this teenager's ability. And you could see them all talking animatedly, gesturing toward Ronaldo, shaking their heads in disbelief. But the most important person watching that night was sitting on the bench with his arms crossed. And Sir Alex Ferguson, the greatest manager in football history, sat there watching this teenager systematically dismantle his defense. And you could see it in his eyes, that familiar glint that appeared whenever Fergie spotted something truly special. And he'd seen it with Giggs when he was a teenager. And he'd seen it with Scholes, with Beckham, with all his great discoveries. And now he was seeing it again in this Portuguese kid. And Ferguson's mind was already made up before the final whistle blew. And he knew talent when he saw it. And what he'd witnessed that night wasn't just talent. It was something transcendent, something that comes along once in a generation. The plane journey that changed everything. And after the match ended, the Manchester United players boarded their plane back to England. And usually after a friendly match, players might chat briefly about the game, make a few jokes, and then move on to thinking about the next training session. But not this time. And absolutely not this time. And the entire flight back to Manchester, the United squad couldn't stop talking about Ronaldo. And can you believe that? And these were champions, world-class players with trophy cabinets full of silverware. And all of them were buzzing like excited schoolboys about this Portuguese teenager they just played against. And Rio Ferdinand reportedly told Ferguson directly, "Boss, we've got to sign him. We absolutely have to." And Giggs agreed emphatically. And Keane was insistent, almost demanding. And one by one, these legends of the game were all telling their manager the exact same thing. Get this kid to Old Trafford. Whatever it takes. Do whatever you have to do. But Sir Alex Ferguson didn't need any convincing whatsoever. And he'd already made up his mind completely during that match. And he knew exactly what he had to do. And within hours of landing back in Manchester, Ferguson was already making calls, setting wheels in motion, beginning negotiations. the transfer becoming a Red Devil the negotiations. And Ferguson moved with incredible speed and decisiveness. And within just days of that unforgettable match, Manchester United opened formal negotiations with Sporting Lisbon. And this wasn't going to be straightforward or easy, though. And Sporting knew exactly what kind of gem they had in their possession. And other clubs were circling like sharks who'd smelled blood in the water. And Liverpool were very interested in signing him. And Arsenal had scouts watching him regularly. And several other top European clubs wanted him too. But Manchester United had something the others didn't possess. And they had made an immediate, genuine, urgent impression that night in Lisbon. And they had shown they wanted him desperately, not in 6 months or next year, but right now. And perhaps most importantly, they had Sir Alex Ferguson. And Ferguson was the master persuader, the man who could sell dreams better than anyone in world football. And when Fergie wanted a player, he usually got that player. And the fee was eventually agreed at £12.24 million. And in 2003, that was a truly substantial amount of money for an 18-year-old with barely 30 first-team appearances to his name. But Ferguson didn't even blink at the price. And he didn't negotiate too hard. And he didn't try to lowball Sporting. And he'd seen enough to know this was a real deal. A generational talent. The number 7 shirt. And now came the jersey number discussion. And this is where it gets really interesting and shows Ferguson's incredible faith. And Ferguson offered Ronaldo the number 7 shirt immediately. And let that sink in for just a moment. And the number 7. And at Manchester United, this wasn't just any old number you give to anyone. And this was a number worn by George Best, quite possibly the greatest player ever to grace a football pitch. And this was Brian Robson's number, Captain Marvel himself. And this was Eric Cantona's number, the king who had transformed United from all-Sarans to champions. And this was David Beckham's number, who had just left for Real Madrid as one of the most famous footballers on the planet. And the pressure that came with that shirt would absolutely crush most teenagers. And the weight of expectation would be unbearable. And imagine being 18 years old and being asked to fill those enormous shoes. And imagine having to live up to that legacy every single match. But you know what Ronaldo said when offered the number 7? And he accepted without any hesitation whatsoever. And he didn't ask for time to think about it. And he didn't say maybe I should start with a different number. And he grabbed that opportunity with both hands. And that's the confidence, the self-belief, the audacity that would define his entire career. And that's what separated him from every other talented teenager who couldn't handle the pressure. The official announcement. And on August 12, 2003, just 6 short days after that magical friendly match in Lisbon, Manchester United announced the signing of Cristiano Ronaldo. And the footballing world stopped in its tracks and paid attention. And who was this kid? And why had United paid so much money? And why had they given him the sacred number 7 shirt? And could he possibly live up to the hype? And Sir Alex Ferguson held a press conference to announce the signing. And he said something that would prove absolutely prophetic in the years to come. And he stated clearly, he is one of the most exciting young players I've ever seen in all my years in football. And coming from Fergie, a man who had worked with some of the greatest talents in football history, that was quite the statement. And that was putting his reputation on the line. And Ronaldo himself was completely overwhelmed with emotion at the press conference. And in his first interviews as a Manchester United player, you could see the excitement dancing in his eyes. And you could see the nervousness in his gestures. And you could see the sheer disbelief on his young face. And he'd gone from the streets of Madeira to one of the biggest clubs in the entire world in less than a decade. And the dream that he chased so desperately was now real. And it was actually happening. 2003 to 2004, the baptism of fire, the debut that stopped Old Trafford. And August 16, 2003, is a date that will live forever in Manchester United folklore and in Cristiano Ronaldo's heart. And Manchester United were hosting Bolton Wanderers at the Theatre of Dreams. And Old Trafford was absolutely buzzing with electric anticipation because everyone wanted to see this new Portuguese wonder kid in action. And this kid had cost £12.24 million. And this kid was wearing the legendary number 7 shirt. And this kid had apparently been absolutely sensational in that friendly. and the match was already well underway with United leading. And then in the 60th minute, Sir Alex Ferguson gave the signal that would change football history. And Cristiano Ronaldo was coming on, and he was replacing Nicky Butt. And the entire stadium, all 6,000 to 7,000 people packed into Old Trafford, rose to their feet as one. And they gave him a standing ovation before he'd even touched the ball. And can you imagine that moment? And can you feel the electricity crackling through the stadium? And can you sense the expectation coursing through every single person in attendance? And then it happened. And for the next 30 absolutely glorious minutes, Ronaldo put on a show that Old Trafford hadn't seen in years. And he was completely unstoppable from his very first touch. And his stopovers left Bolton defenders looking absolutely dizzy and confused. And his pace burned past their backline like they were standing completely still. And his tricks brought gasps from the crowd. And his confidence was off the charts for an 18-year-old making his Premier League debut. And within just minutes of coming on, he won a penalty with his incredible trickery. And he absolutely tormented the Bolton left-back. And every time he got the ball, something exciting happened. And the crowd roared their approval. And Old Trafford hadn't seen anything quite like this since a young Ryan Giggs burst onto the scene all those years ago with similar pace and trickery. The Arsenal rivalry. And there was this absolutely incredible match against Arsenal at Highbury. And this was during the famous Pizzagate game. And United ended Arsenal's remarkable 49-game unbeaten run that October day. And Ronaldo was absolutely magnificent throughout the entire match. And he gave Ashley Cole, one of the best left-backs in the entire world at that time, an absolute torrid time. And every single time Ronaldo got the ball, something exciting happened. And Cole couldn't get near him. And Ronaldo's pace was too much. And his tricks were too clever. And his movement was too intelligent. And United won that historic match 2-0. And Ronaldo was instrumental in ending one of the most remarkable records in English football history. And this was a statement performance. And this showed he could perform in the biggest matches against the best teams. And the rivalry with Arsenal was becoming personal and intense. And these two teams genuinely disliked each other. And there were confrontations. And there was needle. And there was incredible drama. And Ronaldo was right in the middle of it all. And he thrived on it. And he loved the intensity. And he loved being the pantomime villain at Highbury. The tragedy that changed everything. But then October 2004 arrived and brought absolutely devastating, heartbreaking news. And Ronaldo's father, Jose Dinis Aveiro, passed away suddenly. And he died from liver disease. And Ronaldo was absolutely devastated beyond words. And this was his father, the man who had supported his dreams from the beginning. And this was the man who had worked as a kit man so his son could play football. And this was the man who had sacrificed everything for his family. And the truly heartbreaking part was that Jose had never got to see his son play at Old Trafford. And he'd never witnessed his son wearing the famous red shirt in front of 70,000 fans. And he'd never got to see him play in the Premier League. And Ronaldo was absolutely crushed by grief and regret. And this tragedy could have completely broken him. And this could have derailed his entire career. And many young players would have crumbled under such pain. But instead, it transformed him in the most profound way. And from this point forward, every single goal Ronaldo scored, he pointed to the sky. And every achievement was dedicated to his beloved father. And the pain became purpose. And the grief became motivation. And he would make his father proud, no matter what it took. No matter how hard he had to work. And Sir Alex Ferguson showed incredible compassion and understanding during this difficult period. And Ferguson wasn't just a manager to Ronaldo. He became a father figure. And he gave Ronaldo all the time off he needed. And he supported him emotionally through the darkest days. And he helped him channel his grief into his football. And this bond between manager and player became absolutely unbreakable. And it would last for the rest of Ferguson's career and beyond. The season's progress. And that 2004 to 2005 season saw Ronaldo make 50 appearances across all competitions and score 9 goals. And the numbers were steadily improving. And he was getting more consistent. And he was influencing matches more regularly. But more importantly, His overall game was maturing significantly, and he was becoming more dangerous, and he was becoming more influential, and he was becoming the player Ferguson knew he could be. And United finished third in the Premier League that season, and they couldn't catch Chelsea, who had Jose Mourinho as manager and Roman Abramovich billions backing them. And Chelsea won the title comfortably. But Ronaldo was growing into his role with every passing week, and the foundation was being carefully laid for future glory. And in the FA Cup, United reached the final again, and they faced Arsenal in a dramatic match that went to penalties. And Ronaldo took one of United's penalties, and the pressure was enormous. And he'd never taken a penalty in such a high-stakes situation, and his run-up was nervous, and his technique wasn't perfect, and the goalkeeper saved it, and United lost the final, and Ronaldo was devastated. But even this failure was a learning experience, and it taught him about pressure, and it taught him about big moments, and it made him mentally stronger, and it made him determined that next time he wouldn't miss. And every setback was just another stepping stone on his path to greatness. 2005 to 2006, the breakthrough season, the physical transformation. And this was it. And this was the season where Cristiano Ronaldo went from promising young talent with potential to an absolutely world-class performer. And the 2005 to 2006 campaign was when everything finally clicked into place. And Ronaldo had spent the entire summer working obsessively on his body. And he came back to Manchester in pre-season absolutely ripped and muscular. And the skinny teenager was completely gone, replaced by a physical specimen. And he'd been working intensively with the club's fitness coaches. But he was also doing extra sessions on his own initiative. And the dedication was absolutely insane. And while other players were relaxing on vacation, Ronaldo was in the gym sweating. And while others were on beaches, he was on the training pitch perfecting his craft. And the transformation was immediately obvious to everyone. And his speed had always been there. That was natural. But now he had the strength to hold off defenders when they grabbed his shirt. And he had the power to brush them aside. And his tricks were still absolutely mesmerizing. But now they had clear purpose. And he wasn't just beating defenders for the sake of entertainment. And he was creating genuine goal-scoring opportunities. The goals started flowing, and the goals started coming in abundance. And against Charlton Athletic, he scored a stunning free kick that bent around the wall like it was guided by invisible strings. And the technique was absolutely perfect. And the placement was inch-perfect. And the power was just right. And the goalkeeper could only watch it fly past him into the net. And against Portsmouth, he dribbled past 4 defenders like they simply weren't even there. And he glided past one. And he nutmegged another. And he left a third grabbing at thin air. And then he slotted home calmly. And Old Trafford erupted in celebration. And this was world-class. And this was the level everyone knew he could reach. And against Wigan Athletic, he scored twice, showcasing both incredible power and delicate finesse. And one goal was a thunderous shot that nearly broke the net. And the other was a clever chip over the advancing goalkeeper. And he was showing he could score in every way possible. The goal against Portsmouth. But there's one goal from this season that everyone who saw it will remember for the rest of their lives. And it came against Portsmouth in October 2005. And this goal wasn't just special, it was absolutely extraordinary. And it epitomized everything Ronaldo was becoming. And Ronaldo picked up the ball near the halfway line. And he looked up and assessed his options. And then he just decided to run. And he ran straight at the Portsmouth defense. And one defender came to stop him. And Ronaldo skipped past him effortlessly. And then another defender tried. And Ronaldo left him for dead. And then a third defender rushed over. And Ronaldo beat him too. And now a fourth Portsmouth player tried to stop this unstoppable force. And Ronaldo burst past him as well. And 4 Portsmouth players had tried to stop him, and all 4 were left in his wake looking helpless. And he burst into the penalty box with defenders trailing behind him. And he smashed the ball powerfully into the net. And Old Trafford absolutely erupted with pure joy. And this wasn't just a goal. This was a statement of intent. And this was Cristiano Ronaldo announcing to the Premier League and to the world, "I have arrived as a superstar." The League Cup triumph. And February 26th, 2006, arrived with Manchester United in another final, and they were facing Wigan Athletic in the League Cup final at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. And this was Ronaldo's chance to win a major trophy where he was the main man, the star, the one everyone looked to. And he absolutely delivered on that stage. And Ronaldo opened the scoring with a fantastic goal that showcased his improved finishing. And his positioning was perfect. And his movement was intelligent. And his finish was clinical. And United were on their way. And they ended up winning 4-0 in a comfortable victory. And Ronaldo had scored. And he lifted his second trophy with the club. But more importantly, he was named man of the match. And this was his final. And this was his moment. And this was his trophy. And the smile on his face as he lifted that cup told the whole story. And he was happy. And he was confident. And he was home. And Manchester United wasn't just a club anymore. It was his family, his life, his everything. The season's final statistics. And by the end of that breakthrough 2005 to 2006 season, Ronaldo had made 47 appearances and scored 12 goals. And the numbers were definitely getting better with each passing season. But the statistics didn't even begin to tell the whole incredible story. And he was creating countless opportunities for his teammates with his runs and passes. And he was winning matches with his individual brilliance and moments of magic. And he was becoming one of the very first names on the team sheet every single week. And Sir Alex Ferguson could no longer imagine his team without Ronaldo in it. And United finished second in the Premier League that season. And they were runners-up to Chelsea once again. And Chelsea had bought their way to the title with Roman Abramovich's billions. But everyone at Manchester United could see that something incredibly special was building. And with Ronaldo hitting his stride and reaching new levels, the future looked exceptionally bright. And glory was coming. You could feel it in the air. 2006, the World Cup incident that could have ended everything, the quarterfinal in Germany. And before we continue with the 2006 to 2007 season, we absolutely must talk about what happened in the summer of 2006. And the World Cup was being held in Germany. And England were one of the favorites. And Portugal were also expected to do well. And both teams had progressed to the quarterfinals. And they would face each other in a match that would change Ronaldo's life forever. On July 1st, 2006, at the Veltins Arena in Gelsenkirchen, and England versus Portugal in the World Cup quarterfinal. And this match had everything: tension, drama, controversy, and ultimately, heartbreak for England. And Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney were teammates at Manchester United. And they were close friends off the pitch. But today they were opponents, representing their nations. And the match was incredibly tense from the very beginning. And both teams were desperate to reach the semi-finals. And in the 62nd minute, everything changed dramatically. And Wayne Rooney got involved in an incident with Ricardo Carvalho. And Rooney appeared to stamp on Carvalho's groin. And the Portuguese players surrounded the referee demanding action. And Ronaldo rushed over and appeared to push the referee and demand a red card for his club teammate. And the referee showed Rooney the red card. And Rooney was sent off. And as he walked off, television cameras caught Ronaldo winking at the Portugal bench. And that wink would become one of the most infamous moments in World Cup history. And England fans watching at home were absolutely furious. And they felt Ronaldo had got his teammates sent off. And they felt betrayed. And the match went to penalties after a 0-0 draw. And Ronaldo scored his penalty with incredible confidence. And Portugal won the shootout. And England were eliminated. And Ronaldo celebrated with his Portuguese teammates. But back in England, a storm was brewing that threatened to destroy his entire career. The aftermath and media firestorm. And the British media went absolutely nuclear. And the tabloid headlines were vicious and personal. And "Send him back," screamed the back pages. And "He can't play in England again," declared the pundits with absolute certainty. And "United must sell the traitor," demanded some sections of the press. And the vitriol and hatred was absolutely toxic and overwhelming. And some Manchester United fans, caught up in nationalistic fervor, burned Ronaldo's jersey in the streets. And they called for the club to sell him immediately. And they said they never wanted to see him in a United shirt again. And death threats started arriving. and Ronaldo was receiving hate mail. And the pressure on this 21-year-old was absolutely immense and unrelenting. And Ronaldo himself was devastated by the reaction. Ferguson
and he loved
stands by
Manchester,
his man. And he
but
loved
Sir Alex
Manchester
Ferguson
United.
wasn't going to
And he
let
loved
his
the star
fans.
player leave.
And now they seem to hate
Ferguson
him.
immediately
And he genuinely
flew out
considered
to meet forcing
Ronaldo.
a move away.
And he told
and
him in
Real
no
Madrid
uncertain
were
terms
interested
that he was staying
and
at
he could
Manchester
escape to
United.
Spain where he'd be
And
welcome.
Ferguson
And most
protected
players
him
in his
fiercely
situation
from the media
would have demanded a
and he
transfer.
told the press
and
that
most
Ronaldo
players
had
would have
nothing
run
to
away from the
apologize
controversy. And he said Ronaldo was representing his country and had every right to appeal for decisions. And Ferguson's support gave Ronaldo the strength to return. And Ronaldo came back to Manchester that summer. And he faced the music. And he didn't hide. And he didn't run away. And he came back to training and looked his teammates in the eye. And Wayne Rooney, to his eternal credit, publicly supported his friend. And Rooney said there were no hard feelings. And Rooney said what happened on the pitch for national teams stayed there. And their friendship was intact. And most players would have crumbled under that level of scrutiny and hatred. And most players would have forced a move and escaped. But Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't most players. And he decided to do his talking on the football pitch. And every boo from opposition fans would become motivation. And every criticism from the media would become fuel. And he would prove absolutely everyone wrong. 2006 to 2007, the champion emerges playing with a point to prove. And the 2006 to 2007 season began with Ronaldo on an absolute mission. And he was playing like a man possessed by something greater. And every single game, he played with fire in his belly and determination in his heart. And the boos from opposition fans, and he turned them into pure motivation. And the criticism from pundits, and he used it as fuel for his burning desire. And from the very first match of the season, Ronaldo was absolutely sensational. And he scored on the opening day against Fulham with a clinical finish. And then he scored against Charlton with a powerful header. And then against Watford with a sublime free kick. And then against Tottenham with a clever turn and shot. And the goals just kept coming and coming in an unstoppable flood. The evolution of his game. And this season marked a significant evolution in Ronaldo's game. And he wasn't just a tricky winger anymore. And he was becoming a genuine goal-scoring threat. And his positioning in the box was improving with every match. And his finishing was becoming more clinical and reliable. And his free kicks were starting to become genuinely dangerous weapons. And his partnership with Wayne Rooney was absolutely devastating for opponents. And they had chemistry that was almost telepathic. And Rooney would drop deep and create. And Ronaldo would make runs in behind. And they understood each other perfectly. And defenders didn't know whether to follow Rooney or track Ronaldo. And United's attack was becoming one of the most feared in Europe. The quality of goals. But it wasn't just the sheer quantity of goals. It was the absolutely spectacular quality. And there was the unbelievable free kick against Portsmouth that flew into the top corner with such power and precision that the goalkeeper didn't even attempt to save it. And the ball moved in the air like it was alive. And it dipped. And it swerved. And it was absolutely unsavable. And there was the incredible 40-yard screamer against Porto in the Champions League that nearly burst through the back of the net. And Ronaldo received the ball in his own half. And he looked up and saw the goalkeeper off his line. And from 40 yards out, he absolutely thundered it. And the ball flew like a missile. And it crashed into the top corner. And the Porto goalkeeper was completely helpless. And even Porto fans had to applaud that moment of brilliance. And there was the solo goal against Bolton where he picked up the ball in his own half. And he just kept running and running. And he beat one defender with a step over. And he beat another with pure pace. And he beat a third with a clever feint. And he got into the box and finished calmly. And this was individual brilliance of the absolute highest order. The Manchester Derby drama. And the Manchester Derby matches were becoming Ronaldo showcases. And against Manchester City, he was absolutely magnificent. And the derby at Old Trafford saw Ronaldo score a fantastic goal. And he received the ball on the edge of the box. And he took one touch to control it. And he took another touch to set himself. And then he unleashed an unstoppable shot into the bottom corner. And the City goalkeeper dived but had no chance. And Ronaldo celebrated in front of the Stretford end who was singing his name. And these derby matches meant everything to Manchester United fans. And beating City was always special. And Ronaldo understood that. And he delivered when it mattered. And he was becoming a genuine Manchester United legend in the making. European nights at Old Trafford. And the Champions League saw Ronaldo continuing his incredible form. And Old Trafford under the lights on European nights was magical. And there was something special about those matches. And the atmosphere was electric. And Ronaldo thrived in that environment. And against Roma in the quarterfinal, Ronaldo was absolutely sensational. And April 10th, 2007, at Old Trafford. And Manchester United destroyed Roma 7-1. And it was one of the greatest European performances ever seen at the Theatre of Dreams. And Ronaldo scored twice in that demolition. And his first goal was a powerful header that showed his incredible leap and perfect timing. And his second was pure technique, a beautifully placed shot after brilliant team play. And the Roma defenders simply couldn't handle him. And every time he got the ball, they looked terrified. And he was too fast. And he was too strong. And he was too skillful. And he was too good. And United won 7-1 and sent a message to Europe that they were serious contenders. And the second leg in Rome saw United win again. And they won 3-0 at the Stadio Olimpico. And Ronaldo scored again. And that tie was a statement to European football. Manchester United were back among the elite, and Cristiano Ronaldo was leading the charge. Premier League champions. And the La Liga title race that season was absolutely nail-biting. And Manchester United and Chelsea were going head-to-head every single week. And both teams were winning almost every match. And the pressure was absolutely immense. And every goal mattered. And every single point was precious and couldn't be dropped. And Ronaldo was carrying United on his increasingly broad shoulders. And whenever they desperately needed a goal, he delivered without fail. And whenever they needed magic, he produced it. And whenever they needed someone to step up, Ronaldo was there. And his partnership with Wayne Rooney, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, and the rest was absolutely devastating to watch. And on May 6, 2007, Chelsea lost to Arsenal. And that result meant Manchester United were crowned Premier League champions. And their first title since 2003. And the 4-year drought was finally over. And the celebration at Old Trafford was absolutely incredible. And who was at the heart of it all? And Cristiano Ronaldo. And he finished the season with 23 goals in 53 appearances. And 17 of those goals came in the Premier League. And he was becoming one of the most prolific forwards in world football. And he wasn't just a winger anymore. He was a goal-scoring machine. And the celebrations were absolutely incredible to witness. And Ronaldo was dancing with the trophy. And the smile on his face was wider than Manchester itself. And this wasn't just any title. This was his first league championship. And he'd proven all the doubters completely wrong. And the kid who they said was too flashy had just been instrumental in winning the Premier League. And the player they wanted to sell after the World Cup had just delivered a title. Individual glory arrives. And the individual accolades came flooding in like a tidal wave. And Ronaldo won the PFA Players Player of the Year award. And this was voted for by his fellow professionals, the people who actually had to play against him every week. And they recognized his incredible talent and consistent brilliance. And winning this award meant everything because it came from his peers. And he also won the PFA Young Player of the Year award. And at 22 years old, he was still eligible for the Young Player category. And winning both awards in the same season was incredibly rare. And it showed just how dominant he'd been. And he won the Football Writers Association Footballer of the Year award. And the journalists who criticized him after the World Cup were now voting him as the best player in England. And the transformation in how he was perceived was remarkable. And he was named in the PFA Team of the Year. And his performances had been so consistently excellent that his inclusion was never in doubt. And he was being recognized as one of the best players in the Premier League. The Ballon d'Or race. But perhaps most significantly, Ronaldo finished second in the Ballon d'Or voting. And the winner was Kaká, who had led AC Milan to Champions League glory. But Ronaldo finished second. And at just 22 years old, Ronaldo was being recognized as one of the two best players on the entire planet. and the world was watching his development, and they were witnessing something truly special. And this second-place finish lit a fire inside Ronaldo, and he was determined to win the Ballon d'Or, and he knew what he needed to do, and he needed to win the Champions League, and he needed to score even more goals, and he needed to be even better, and that hunger and drive would fuel the most spectacular season of his career. 2007 to 2008, the season of absolute perfection pre-season preparation. And if you thought 2006 to 2007 was incredible, you weren't ready for what came next. And the 2007 to 2008 season was when Cristiano Ronaldo reached a level that few players in the entire history of football have ever achieved. And this was the season of pure, unadulterated, absolute perfection and greatness. And Ronaldo spent that summer of 2007 preparing like never before. And he was already in fantastic physical condition. But he pushed himself even harder. And he worked on every single aspect of his game obsessively. And his heading needed to improve, so he practiced it thousands of times. And his weaker foot needed work, so he drilled it relentlessly. And his positioning needed refinement, so he studied video endlessly. And when he returned for pre-season training, his teammates noticed something different. And he was even more focused. And he was even more determined. And he was even more confident. And he had this look in his eyes that said he was ready to conquer the world. The goals come in floods. And from the very first whistle of the season, Ronaldo was absolutely unstoppable. And he scored in the Community Shield against Chelsea at Wembley. And he scored on the Premier League opening day against Reading. And he scored against Portsmouth, Tottenham, Everton, Middlesbrough. And he was scoring for absolute fun. But it wasn't just that he was scoring regularly. It was how he was scoring. And he was scoring headers from impossible angles. And he was scoring free kicks that defied the laws of physics. And he was scoring long-range screamers. And he was scoring tap-ins. And he was scoring penalties. And he was scoring solo goals. And he was scoring team goals. And he could score in literally every possible way imaginable. The Aston Villa free kick. And let's talk about specific goals because some from this season deserve their own chapters in football history books. And there was the absolutely stunning free kick against Aston Villa in August 2007. And this wasn't just a good free kick. This was a free kick that seemed to defy physics and reality. And Ronaldo placed the ball down about 30 yards from goal. And he took his trademark stance, standing with his legs wide apart and staring at the goal. And the Aston Villa wall was set. And goalkeeper Scott Carson was positioned carefully. And everyone in the stadium knew what was coming. And Ronaldo ran up. And he struck the ball with the outside of his right boot. And the ball flew through the air. But then something incredible happened. And it started moving. And it was swerving. And it was dipping. And it was moving so much it looked like it was possessed. And Carson, the goalkeeper, was left completely helpless. And he moved one way. And the ball moved another. And it crashed into the net. And Old Trafford erupted. And this wasn't just a great goal. And this was a goal that was shown on news broadcasts around the world. And this was a goal that made people who didn't even like football stop and watch. And the technique required was absolutely extraordinary. The Portsmouth Thunderbolt. And then there was the goal against Fulham in February 2008. And this goal was pure, raw power. And Ronaldo received the ball about 35 yards from goal. And most players would pass or dribble closer. But not Ronaldo. And he took one touch to set himself. And then he absolutely thundered it toward goal. And the Fulham goalkeeper didn't even react. And that's how fast the shot was. And the ball flew like a rocket. And it crashed into the top corner with such force you thought it might go through the net. And the power was superhuman. And the accuracy was pinpoint. And the technique was perfect. The Porto Screamer. And we absolutely must talk about the goal against Porto in the Champions League in April 2008. And this goal might have been the best of the entire season. And Ronaldo received the ball about 40 yards from goal. And 40 yards. And he hit it with such incredible power and technique. And the ball flew through the Porto night sky. And Porto's goalkeeper Helton barely even saw it. And it was that fast and that true. And the trajectory was absolutely perfect. And the power was immense. And it flew into the top corner. and even Porto fans in the Estadio do Dragao had to applaud. And when opposition fans applaud your goal, you know you've done something truly special. The Newcastle volley. But if there's one goal from this season that perfectly encapsulates Ronaldo's genius, it's the volley against Newcastle in January 2008. And this goal was simply outrageous in its difficulty and execution. And Ronaldo was running at full pace. And the ball came to him at an awkward height, neither high nor low. And he was off balance. And there were defenders around him. And most players would try to control it first. But Ronaldo somehow adjusted his body in midair, and he contorted himself impossibly, and he volleyed it with incredible power and accuracy, and it flew past Shea Given into the net. And the technique required to score that goal was absolutely ridiculous. And the body control, and the balance, and the power, and the accuracy, and all while running at full speed. And this goal was shown in coaching seminars as an example of perfect technique. Record-breaking numbers. And let's talk about the numbers from this season, because they are absolutely mind-blowing. And Ronaldo finished the 2007 to 2008 campaign with 42 goals in 49 appearances. And 42 goals. And for a winger. And these weren't just any goals either. And these were important goals. And match-winning goals. And title-deciding goals. And in the Premier League alone, he scored 31 goals. And a winger scoring 31 Premier League goals in a single season was absolutely unprecedented. And he was outscoring dedicated centre-forwards. And he was outscoring traditional strikers. And he was beating them all. And these 31 goals won him the Premier League Golden Boot. And he was the league's top scorer. And no winger had ever scored that many Premier League goals in a single season. And the record was absolutely remarkable. The Champions League journey begins. And in the Champions League, United were on a serious mission. And they wanted to win the competition for the first time since that magical night in Barcelona in 1999. And with Ronaldo in this incredible form, they believed they could do it. And the group stage was navigated with relative ease. And Ronaldo scored important goals along the way. And there was that wonderful goal against Dynamo Kiev that flew into the top corner from 25 yards. And United topped their group and moved into the knockout rounds. And in the round of 16, they faced Lyon, and the French champions were tough opponents. But Ronaldo was absolutely brilliant in both legs. And he scored crucial goals that helped United advance. And in the first leg at the Stade Gerland, he scored to give United a vital away goal. And in the second leg at Old Trafford, he was involved in the build-up to the goals. And United progressed comfortably. Roma redux. And then came the quarter-final, and it was Roma again. And United had hammered them 7-1 the previous season. And Roma wanted revenge. But Ronaldo and United had other ideas. And the first leg at the Stadio Olimpico was tight and tense. And United defended well and got a 2-0 win. And Ronaldo scored one of those crucial goals. And at Old Trafford in the second leg, United were professional and controlled. And Ronaldo scored again in a 1-0 victory. And United had eliminated Roma with a 3-0 aggregate win. And Ronaldo had once again been instrumental. The Barcelona semi-final. And the semi-final was massive. And Manchester United versus Barcelona. And this was a clash of titans. And Barcelona had Ronaldinho, Lionel Messi, Xavi, Iniesta. And they were playing incredible football. And this would be a true test of United's credentials. And the first leg was at the Camp Nou in Barcelona. And this stadium had seen United win the Champions League in 1999. And could they get a good result there again? And the match was incredibly tense and cagey. And both teams were cautious. And neither wanted to concede. And the match ended 0-0. And United had a valuable clean sheet to take back to Manchester. And the second leg at Old Trafford was absolutely electric. And the atmosphere was incredible. And 76,000 fans packed into the Theatre of Dreams. And they were roaring from the first minute. And United started brilliantly. And Paul Scholes scored an absolute screamer from 25 yards that flew into the top corner. And Old Trafford erupted. And then Ronaldo put the tie beyond doubt. And he scored a fantastic goal that showed his incredible intelligence and positioning. And he was in exactly the right place at the right time. and he finished clinically. And United were 2-0 up on aggregate. And they were going to Moscow. And they were going to the Champions League final. And Ronaldo's performance in that semi-final was outstanding. And he worked tirelessly. And he tracked back. And he created chances. And he scored when it mattered. And this was the complete performance from a complete player. The road to Moscow, Champions League Final 2008, the build-up. And May 21st, 2008, the Luzhniki Stadium in Moscow. And Manchester United versus Chelsea in the Champions League final. And an all-English final. And the first time ever that two English teams had met in the final of Europe's premier competition. And the whole world was watching this historic match. And the build-up to the final was absolutely intense. And Chelsea had an incredible team. And they had Thierry, Frank Lampard, Didier, Drogba, Michael Essien. And they were managed by Avram Grant after Jose Mourinho's departure. And they were determined to win their first Champions League. And United were equally determined to win their third. And Ronaldo was under enormous pressure. And everyone expected him to be the difference maker. And he was the best player in the world at that moment. And surely he would deliver on the biggest stage. And the expectation was almost unbearable. The match itself. And the match kicked off on a rainy Moscow evening. And the pitch was slippery. And conditions were difficult. And both teams started nervously. And the tension was palpable. And you could feel how much this match meant to everyone involved. And in the 26th minute, Ronaldo opened the scoring. And was Brown crossed from the right. And the ball came to Ronaldo about 8 yards from goal. And he rose above everyone else. And his leap was incredible. And his hang time was superhuman. And he powered a header past Petr Cech into the net. And United were ahead. And Ronaldo celebrated with his arms spread wide. And this was his moment. And this was his stage. And this was him showing the world why he was the best. And he'd scored in a Champions League final. And he was leading United to glory. But Chelsea fought back. And Frank Lampard equalized just before halftime. And suddenly the match was level. And everything was still to play for. And the tension increased even more. And the second half was incredibly tense. And both teams had chances. And Ronaldo had opportunities to score again. And Drogba had chances for Chelsea. And neither team could find the winning goal. And the match went to extra time. Extra time drama. And extra time was equally tense and dramatic. And legs were tired. And players were cramping. And the Moscow pitch was cutting up. And still neither team could break the deadlock. And Chelsea had Didier Drogba sent off for slapping Vidic. And they were down to 10 men. But still the match remained 1-1. And penalties. And it would all come down to penalties. And the tension was absolutely unbearable. And this was Manchester United's chance to win their third European Cup. And this was Chelsea's chance to win their first. And everything rested on the penalty shootout. The penalty shootout. And both teams scored their first penalties. And Tevez for United. And Ballack for Chelsea. And then Carrick for United. And Belletti for Chelsea. And then Ronaldo stepped up to take United's third penalty. And this was the moment to be the ultimate hero. And this was the chance to seal victory. And this was Ronaldo's opportunity to cement his legacy. And he placed the ball on the spot. And he took his deep breaths. And he stood in his trademark stance. And the entire world watched. And he ran up. And he struck it. And Petr Cech dived. And he saved it. And Ronaldo had missed. And the look of devastation on his face was heartbreaking. And he'd let everyone down. And he'd failed in the biggest moment. And Lampard scored for Chelsea. And suddenly Chelsea were ahead in the shootout. And then Nani scored for United to keep them alive. And then Ashley Cole scored for Chelsea. And then Owen Hargreaves scored for United. And it all came down to Thierry. The slip and victory. And if Thierry scored, Chelsea would win the Champions League. And he stepped up confidently. And he was Chelsea's captain. And he was going to win it for them. And he ran up. But then his standing foot slipped on the wet turf. And he fell. And the ball hit the post. And he missed. And the shootout continued. And Anderson scored for United. And Kalou scored for Chelsea. And then Giggs scored for United. And then Anelka stepped up for Chelsea. And if he missed, United would win. And Edwin van der Sar, United's goalkeeper, was focused, and Anelka ran up and struck it, and Van der Sar dived, and he saved it, and Manchester United were champions of Europe, and the celebrations were absolutely incredible, and United players were jumping on top of each other, and the fans were going wild, and Ronaldo, despite missing his penalty, was crying tears of absolute joy, and he'd done it, and he was a European champion, and Manchester United were kings of Europe for the third time, and Ronaldo's emotions were overwhelming, and the joy, and the relief, and the pride, and this was what he'd dreamed of as a kid in Madeira, and this was why he'd left home at 12 years old, and this was why he'd worked harder than everyone else, and champions of Europe, the domestic double and more glory back-to-back Premier League titles. But we're not done with this incredible season yet. And Manchester United also retained the Premier League title, and they finished 2 points clear of Chelsea. And it was incredibly tight, and every match mattered, and Ronaldo's 31 league goals were absolutely crucial to winning the title. And this was back-to-back Premier League championships. And United were the dominant force in English football once again, and with Ronaldo in this form, they were almost unstoppable. And he'd been involved in so many match-winning moments throughout the season. And there were the games where United were drawing or losing, and Ronaldo would produce something magical. And he'd score a free kick out of nowhere, and he'd dribble past 3 defenders and score. And he'd head home across at the back post. And time again, he was the difference. The Club World Cup. And there was also the FIFA Club World Cup in December 2007. And United traveled to Japan to represent Europe. And they faced Gamba Osaka in the semifinal and won comfortably. And then in the final, they played LDU Quito from Ecuador, and Wayne Rooney scored the only goal of the game. And United won 1-0, and they were world champions. And Ronaldo played in both matches and was excellent throughout. And another trophy was added to the collection. And this team was winning everything. The individual awards arrive. And now came the individual recognition that Ronaldo so richly deserved. And on December 2nd, 2008, Cristiano Ronaldo was announced as the winner of the Ballon d'Or and the best player in the world. And he'd done it. And he climbed to the absolute summit of world football. And the ceremony in Paris was incredibly emotional. And Ronaldo, dressed in an elegant suit, walked onto the stage. And tears were streaming down his face. And this was the moment he'd dreamed of. And this was a validation of all those hours of extra training. And this was proof of all that dedication and sacrifice. And in his acceptance speech, he thanked everyone who had helped him. And he thanked Sir Alex Ferguson for believing in him. And he thanked his teammates for supporting him. And he thanked his family for their love. And he thanked his late father, pointing to the sky as he always did. And this one was for you, Dad. And he also won the FIFA World Player of the Year award. And he became the first Premier League player to win both the Ballon d'Or and the FIFA award in the same year since the awards were unified. And the double recognition was unprecedented. And he won the PFA Players Player of the Year award again. And his fellow professionals voted him the best once more. And he won the FWA Footballer of the Year award again. And the journalists who had once criticized him now universally praised him. And he was named in the PFA Team of the Year. And he won the Premier League Golden Boot with those 31 goals. And the awards just kept coming. And he won the Sir Matt Busby Player of the Year award, voted for by Manchester United fans. And he won every single individual award available. And he was universally recognized as the best player on the planet. The complete statistics. And the final statistics from the 2007 to 2008 season was simply unprecedented. And 42 goals in 49 appearances across all competitions. And the Champions League trophy. And the Premier League title. And the Club World Cup. And the Ballon d'Or. And the FIFA World Player of the Year. And every individual award imaginable. And this wasn't just a great season. And this was one of the greatest individual seasons in the entire history of football. And Ronaldo had reached a level that few players ever reach. And he was at the absolute peak of his powers. And he was only 23 years old. 2008 to 2009, the final chapter, the summer of discontent. And the summer of 2008 brought complications and drama. and Real Madrid wanted Ronaldo desperately. And Florentino Perez was returning as Real Madrid president, and he wanted to bring Ronaldo to the Bernabeu to be the flagship of his new Galacticos project. And Ronaldo himself admitted publicly that he wanted to go, and it was his dream to play for Real Madrid. And Sir Alex Ferguson was absolutely furious, and he publicly stated that Ronaldo would not be sold. And he said categorically that he was staying at Manchester United, and that was final. And the situation was incredibly tense for weeks. And would Ronaldo force a move? And would he rebel against Ferguson? And would this dream partnership end in acrimony and bitterness? And the media speculated endlessly. But eventually, a compromise was reached. And Ronaldo would stay for one more season. And he would give Manchester United one final year. And then, if Real Madrid came back with the right offer, United would let him go. And it was a gentleman's agreement between Ferguson and Ronaldo, and their relationship remained strong despite the tension. One more year of magic. And so Ronaldo came back to Manchester for the 2008 to 2009 season. And despite the uncertainty about his future hanging over everything, he was still absolutely brilliant. And he was still committed. And he was still the team's leader and main man. And the season started with a Community Shield against Portsmouth. And United won on penalties. And then came the UEFA Super Cup against Zenit St. Petersburg. And this was Europe's champion versus Russia's champion. And Ronaldo scored the only goal of his side with a brilliant header. And United won 2-1. And another trophy was in the cabinet. Continued brilliance. And in the Premier League, Ronaldo continued scoring spectacular goals throughout the season. And there was the incredible free kick against Stoke City that crashed in off the crossbar with tremendous power. And there was the diving header against Tottenham that showed his incredible timing and bravery. And there was the solo goal against West Bromwich Albion where he beat 3 defenders before finishing coolly. And his understanding with Wayne Rooney was still telepathic. And they were still one of the most devastating partnerships in world football. And Berbatov had joined from Tottenham and added another dimension to United's attack. And Tevez was still there providing energy and pressing. And United's forward line was absolutely lethal. The title race, and the Premier League title race, was incredibly tight throughout the entire season. And Liverpool, managed by Rafael Benitez, were pushing United all the way. And it went down to the final weeks of the campaign. And every single match was crucial. And every point drop could be decisive. And the pressure was absolutely immense on both teams. And United showed their championship experience and mental strength. And they kept winning when it mattered most. And Ronaldo was still delivering crucial goals. And on May 16, 2009, United drew 0-0 with Arsenal at Old Trafford. And results elsewhere meant they'd won the title. And 3 Premier League championships in a row. And a hat-trick of titles. And Ronaldo had now won 3 league titles in 4 years at Manchester United. And the celebrations were jubilant but tinged with sadness. And everyone knew this might be Ronaldo's last time lifting the Premier League trophy as a Manchester United player. And he celebrated with his teammates, savoring every moment. And there was joy mixed with the knowledge that goodbye was coming. And this felt like a farewell. The Rome disappointment. And United reached the Champions League final again. And they were defending their crown. And they wanted back-to-back Champions League titles. And the final was in Rome, at the Stadio Olimpico. And the opponents were Barcelona. And Pep Guardiola's Barcelona were playing the most beautiful football the world had seen in years. And this was the match everyone wanted to see. And Manchester United's power and directness versus Barcelona's tiki-taka passing. And Ronaldo versus Messi. And Ferguson versus Guardiola. And this was a clash of philosophies, of styles, of titans. And May 27, 2009, arrived with enormous anticipation. And both sets of fans descended on Rome. And the atmosphere was electric. And this was going to be special. But the match itself was disappointing for United and for Ronaldo. And Barcelona was simply too good on the night. And they were magnificent. And Samuel Eto'o scored in the 10th minute. And United couldn't find their rhythm. And Barcelona's passing was hypnotic. And they kept the ball for long periods. And United couldn't get near them. And in the 70th minute, Lionel Messi scored with a header, and Barcelona won 2-0, and they were champions of Europe. And United's dream of back-to-back titles was over, and Ronaldo had a frustrating night, unable to break down Barcelona's incredible defense. And the disappointment was crushing, and Ronaldo sat on the pitch after the final whistle with tears in his eyes. And this wasn't how he wanted his United career to end, and he wanted to leave on a high. But Barcelona had been the better team on the night, and sometimes you have to acknowledge that. The season's numbers. And despite the disappointing end, Ronaldo still finished the 2008-2009 season with excellent numbers. And he scored 26 goals in 53 appearances, and still world-class by any measure, and still contributing massively to United's success. And he'd helped them win another Premier League title. And he'd shown throughout the season that despite the uncertainty over his future, he was still committed. And he still gave everything for Manchester United. And he still wore the shirt with pride. And he still pointed to the sky after every goal for his father. The farewell, June 2009, the announcement. And in June 2009, the announcement that everyone expected but dreaded finally came. And Real Madrid had agreed a world record transfer fee of £80 million with Manchester United. And Cristiano Ronaldo was leaving Old Trafford. And the 6-year love affair was ending. And the transfer fee was astronomical. And it was the highest fee ever paid for a footballer. And it showed just how valuable Ronaldo had become. And Real Madrid were getting the best player in the world at the peak of his powers. The emotional goodbye. And the farewell was incredibly emotional for everyone involved. And Ronaldo released a public statement thanking Manchester United for everything. And he thanked the club for believing in an 18-year-old kid from Madeira. And he thanked the fans for their incredible support, especially after the World Cup incident. And he thanked his teammates for making him better every day. And most importantly, he thanked Sir Alex Ferguson. And he called Ferguson a father figure in his statement. And he credited him with making him the player and man he'd become. And the bond between them was unbreakable. And Ferguson had seen potential and nurtured it into greatness. And their relationship would last forever. And Ferguson, despite his earlier anger about Real Madrid's pursuit, was gracious and warm in his farewell. And he said Ronaldo had been a fantastic player for Manchester United. And he said the club would never forget what he'd achieved. And he wished him well for the future and for his career at Real Madrid. And there was genuine love and respect between them. And the Manchester United fans were heartbroken but understanding. And they knew Ronaldo had given them 6 incredible years. And he'd given them moments they'd never forget. And he'd given them 3 Premier League titles, a Champions League trophy, an FA Cup, 2 League Cups, and countless moments of pure magic. And they couldn't ask for more than that. The legacy numbers. And let's look at the complete record from his 6 years at Manchester United. And in 292 appearances, Cristiano Ronaldo scored 118 goals. And for a player who started as a winger, those numbers are absolutely phenomenal. And they represent consistency, improvement, and evolution. But it's not just the goals. And it's the assists he provided. And it's the chances he created. And it's the matches he won almost single-handedly. And Ronaldo's partnership with Wayne Rooney, Carlos Tevez, and others produced some of the most devastating attacking football the Premier League has ever witnessed. The trophy cabinet and the trophy hall tells its own incredible story. And 3 Premier League titles, 2006-2007, 2007-2008, 2008-2009. And 3 consecutive championships, and 1 UEFA Champions League, 2007-2008. And the pinnacle of club football, and 1 FA Cup, 2003-2004. And his first trophy with the club, and 2 League Cups, 2005-2006, 2008-2009. And 1 FIFA Club World Cup, 2008. And World Champions, and 1 Community Shield, 2007. And 1 UEFA Super Cup, 2008. And that's 9 major trophies in 6 years. And an average of 1.5 trophies per season. And absolutely incredible individual honors. And the individual accolades during his United years were equally impressive. and won Ballon d'Or 2008, and the Ultimate Individual Prize, and won FIFA World Player of the Year 2008, and recognized globally, and 2 PFA Players Player of the Year awards 2007, 2008, and voted by his peers, and 1 PFA Young Player of the Year 2007, and 2 FWA Footballer of the Year awards 2007, 2008, and the Journalist's Choice, and 1 Premier League Golden Boot 2007 to 2008, 31 goals, and 3 selections to the PFA Team of the Year 2006, 2007, 2008, and 3 Sir Matt Busby Player of the Year awards 2004, 2007, 2008, and the fans' favorite, the iconic moments that define his United career, the debut against Bolton. And we've talked about many moments, but some deserve to be remembered forever. And that debut against Bolton in August 2003 when Old Trafford stood as one, and the 6,000 to 7,000 people who witnessed something special, and the standing ovation before he'd touched the ball, and the 30 minutes of magic that followed. The goal against Portsmouth, 2006, and that goal where he beat 4 defenders, and where he picked up the ball and just ran, and where he showed that he was becoming unstoppable, and where Old Trafford knew they were watching someone truly special. The free kick against Portsmouth, 2008, and that free kick that defied physics, and that moved so much in the air it seemed impossible, and that left Scott Carson completely helpless, and that was shown on televisions around the world. The hat-trick against Newcastle, and there were the hat-tricks, and the one against Newcastle in January 2008 was particularly special, and 3 goals of different types, and showcasing his complete skill set, and showing he could score with power, precision, and creativity. The Porto Screamer, and that 40-yard goal against Porto, and where he hit it from so far out, and where it flew like a missile, and where it announced him as a Champions League superstar. The header in Moscow, and the header in the Champions League final, and his leap that seemed to defy gravity, and the power he generated, and the moment United took the lead in the biggest match. The penalty miss in Moscow, and even the penalty miss in the shootout, and because it showed his humanity, and because despite missing, his team still won, and because the emotion afterward showed how much it meant to him. The celebration, and his celebration, and the way he pointed to the sky after every goal for his father, and the way he spread his arms wide, and the Sue that would become iconic, and every single celebration told a story.